All right, it's championship season in college football, and we hope you had a great holiday. December, the calendar is turned, and that means it's championship Saturday coming up. Actually, championship Friday coming up. That's why we're recording the show a little earlier in the week on Thursday. Marc Lawrence, of course, joining me from playbooksports.com. And Mark, this is it. This is championship Saturday and Friday and whatever you want to call it. But the fact is, as a Michigan fan, we're finally here. Finally.
Well, you can have your moment of glory, and I'm going to say well-deserved, well-earned, because there was nothing fluky at all about that Michigan trouncing of Ohio State. It was a really masterful job that Harbaugh and the Wolverines did in that football game. You mentioned it being championship weekend. It's sort of like Breeders' Cup, where you've got Friday and Saturday for Breeders' Cup. We've got Friday and Saturday for championship games this particular weekend. And, this is the ultimate for what these teams play for, are these championship games. And then hopefully some of these teams will emerge and make it to the college football playoff. Michigan being one of those teams right now. They're ranked number 2, but they're going to have to beat Iowa to retain that position.
Yeah, and look, I've been saying this most of the season, and so far, again, I said this last week, and so far so good. And once again, another week has gone by, and so far so good. This is just a different Michigan team. Jim Harbaugh did a great job. He got rid of Don Brown. He got rid of all the older coaches. He brought in the new young coaches. He loosened things up. Everybody, when you read about what was going on behind the scenes, all the players were saying how much fun they were having. This is much earlier in the season. And then strategy-wise, was to go back to basics, go back to what made Jim Harbaugh a successful college coach, running the football. And yes, he doesn't have Andrew Luck, but he didn't need to have Andrew Luck, because when you have a good offensive line and a great running game and a good defense, that goes a long way. And the strategy paid off. This was actually what I was looking forward to when he first got there. I think he didn't get it. It took him a long time to kind of get it. I think he got carried away with the pass-happy way that college football teams had started to open things up, including Ohio State. And he felt, well, maybe I got to do that. No, you don't have to do that. Just go back to basics. It worked. And I think when he said this is the beginning, I know what he's talking about, because he knows this is basically what I should have been doing all along. We're going to go down this road from now on. It's going to continue to be a running team moving forward. And he's got the freshman quarterback waiting in the wings when Cade leaves in a couple of years. So I think it's just going to continue to roll. That's why I know there's a lot of people. I know the newsletter, once again, it's going to have a whole bunch of anti-Michigan stuff. It's still going to have that. The difference this week, though, is Iowa and all of the good stuff that Iowa brings to the table regarding being in the dog spot. So it would be a lot easier for me to say, well, I think the newsletter's opinion on Iowa covering Michigan this week is wrong, because all they're doing is slamming Michigan again for all the bad Jim Harbaugh years and all the, but that's not the case with Iowa. This game concerns me because if you take a look at all the trends, when Kirk Ferentz is in this spot, they usually do a very good job of covering, let alone coming away with upsets.
Yeah, and the reason that we call Iowa out in the newsletter this week is not so much anti-Michigan bashing, and it's next to impossible to do after what they accomplished last week. It's basically two things. Number one, I don't feel there's any way humanly possible Michigan could be up to the level this week that they were at last week.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
No.
Okay, they climbed that mountain. They got to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro last week. Okay, are they going to be able to get back up to Mount Kilimanjaro the next week? Okay.
Sure.
And number two, in Iowa, you've got a formidable opponent here in Kirk Ferentz, who's been here and done that. They play a real complete football game, Iowa does. He's masterful in the role of an underdog. I think this game has a letdown written all over it. Now, letdown to the point, well, will they lose this game? That if they did, that would fall on Harbaugh, okay? Because he can't let his team let down, because everything they did last week would be for naught if they lost this football game, okay?
Yes.
So, but I still think it's going to be impossible to get this team back to that very same level they were at last week. And in you also take a look. What we called out in the Playbook newsletter is the fact that in the 10 years that the Big Ten has played conference championship games, the favorite in these games is just 2-8 against the spread.
Yeah.
So, everything's pointing to Iowa here, but it's not, again, so much an anti-Michigan bashing. It's the situation.
Yeah, this is going to be very interesting, the way this is going to set up this week, because we have so many new, fresh teams to the party. It's Georgia finally breaking through, and now they're the favorites against Alabama. And you got Michigan breaking through against Ohio State. You got Oklahoma State breaking through against Oklahoma. You have Cincinnati. Will the group of 5 team finally get in? So you got all these things. And when I think about it, it's like some of me believes that what could happen this weekend is that all of those, one of two things I think could happen is that all of those teams, Georgia, we've been waiting for this all year. Michigan, we are just, even though we can't nearly get up for what we did last week, we are just so confident right now, and we are flying so high that no one is going to stop us. And Cincinnati, we're at home. This is our chance. We win, we're in. We're going to steamroll Houston. And same thing for Oklahoma State, that maybe all these favorites are actually going to, because they just never been there before in a way, are going to be, we're going to take this and we're going to go with it, and we're all going to meet you in the Final Four playoff spot. On the other hand, what you could have happening is, because these teams have not been in this spot before, that they could all feel the pressure of not knowing how to handle it, and you could have a whole bunch of upsets in the next couple of days.
Yeah, we talk oftentimes about the noose tightening for undefeated teams down the stretch. It's the same case this weekend. These teams that are here and expected to win, to maybe go to the big dance, that being the college football playoff, it's going to be a tight noose this particular weekend, okay? Especially with letdown combinations written all over it. So I'd look out for that this particular weekend, and I think it would start in the Michigan-Iowa game.
I was looking over, I did, I don't know, on your newsletter, I didn't notice it, but I was just going over from the magazine, the Playbook magazine. So I used this, and I just looked over the last 3 years, the last 29 title games, and the favorites are 19-10 straight up, which I think is about normal. 19-10, it's okay.
Straight up,
yeah,
yes,
straight up.
Yes, right.
But 12-17 against the spread. So the Dogs have actually done a really good job in these title games, covering the spread. As a matter of fact, I even think last year there might have been a whole bunch of Dogs last year, if I'm not mistaken, that covered. But interesting is that there's not a lot of big spreads. So if you're looking for, hey, where's my opportunity to hit some big, money line spread? Well, you got Alabama, you have Utah State, and Iowa. Maybe Baylor, you could kind of throw in there, but there's not a lot. So it's just not a lot out there. But I don't know what your feeling is on the difference between the normal last few years, where you've had a lot maybe of the better teams, better programs that are in this spot, and they've won the games, but they haven't covered, as opposed to these newbies that are fresh, and this is their opportunity, and whether or not you kind of feel that the pattern should remain the same or not.
It's a little bit the same as the NCAA tournament when you get to that March Madness tournament and all the success that the underdogs have. And it's largely because they're thrilled to be here, they're in an underdog role, and they play balls to the wall, hearts out in games like this because of the underdog, and they're not expected to win. The pressure, again, falls to the other side in games like this. So the combination of everything makes the dog a little bit more profitable in games like this, and that, to me, is a starting point. I want to say one other thing here that you brought out a good point about what Michigan did last week. It's ironic that they went to Woody Hayes football last week in running the football. Okay, that was Woody Hayes' mantra. Okay, just 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and that's what Harbaugh did last week. And I'd be really, really surprised if he gets away from that this particular week as well.
Happening. No. And I also think that another reason why I like that style, less chances for mistakes. there's always when you're a throwing team, you got the quarterback that has to throw the ball. You got the pass blocking, you have the route running, you have the catching, you have the deflections. There's a lot that goes in that has to be really fine when you're running the football. It's here you go, and then you just got to. It's just let's run the football. You know what's coming, and
don't
it's
fumble.
mano a mano.
Right.
And so I think that's why Army is so successful, and some of these teams that don't have the talent are successful when they use triple option and things of that nature. That's the reason they do it a lot of the times, because they're not just because they're not talented. That's the major reason, but it's also a much easier way and a simpler way to win football games.
Unquestionably, and it goes to my handicapping mantra. When you pass the ball, 3 things can happen, and 2 of them are bad.
Yeah.
That's why Woody Hayes ran the football. That's what he said. I'm quoting him, okay? When you bet a favorite, 3 things can happen, and 2 of them are bad. You run the ball, 2 good things can happen. You bet a dog, 2 good things can happen. So eliminate as many possibilities as you can to eradicate the bad. And that's why you see these military teams grinding out the football, pounding the ball. They shorten the clock and they bring the other team to their level. That's the reason they do all that. And it's successful. It's really for them. And it works for people who like dogs that are looking for live dogs and playing them also on the money line.
Before we move on from the Michigan game, do you think there's any chance that Aiden Hutchinson has a Heisman? Can he be a true contention for the Heisman?
No, too late. I mean, great performance, good season, great performance. It's just too late, and it's also the fact that he's a defensive lineman. Thibodeau from Oregon was expected to be that guy. He got hurt early. Never happened. He'll probably be the number 1 pick in the draft. But it's all about the glamour, the quarterbacks. And, that's who you're going to see in New York, quarterbacks. Not even running backs, quarterbacks. So, tip of the hat to him on a great game he had and a good season he's had. It runs in the blood, obviously, but I don't think we're going to see Hutchinson in New York. I'd be surprised.
And, it's a shame that a different type of, like a defender, even the kid from Notre Dame, couldn't win this year, because there's really not – I mean, they're talking about giving it to a couple of quarterbacks at Ohio State and Alabama that are just babies. They just got here. And they're not doing anything so special that we haven't seen a million times before from even their predecessors. So you would think that this would have been a perfect opportunity. Maybe if Thibodeau would have stayed healthy all year and would have had 3 sacks against Ohio State because he didn't play in the game, and Oregon would be in the playoffs, or, they have a shot for the playoffs. But and I agree with you, it was just too late for Hutchinson. By the way, Detroit, number 1 draft pick. Do they go Thibodeau, or do they go with the local boy and Aiden Hutchinson?
Well, what they're supposed to do is go with the better talent, okay? And I think all scouts would say that would be Thibodeau, okay? Much more physically impressive, if you will. Quicker, faster, all those things, checks all those boxes when it comes to, going to camp and going through all the drills and everything else like that. If they went to the local boy, they would be doing it out of their heart, and I think that would end up being a mistake.
Yeah, and that would be good. I'm a Jet fan, and I just hope I get one of those guys. So that's all. And because, unfortunately, I don't know which quarterback. Somebody has to fall in love with a quarterback, and I just don't know if any of these quarterbacks can get into the top 5. I think getting in the top 10 is going to be a hard thing for these quarterbacks this year. But you never know. Sometimes GMs, you know how they are. I can only hope. Okay, so the SEC. This is the big opportunity now for anybody that wants to take a dog. You can't have a better looking dog spot than Alabama. Never an underdog. And you're getting 2-1 on the money line. And in a situation where Georgia now is going to have to feel, they could say all they want about, we've been targeting in this game, but this is different than the Michigan-Ohio State matchup. Because Michigan was the dog. They were a heavy dog in the game. They hadn't won in even longer than Georgia against Alabama. Here, Georgia's the favorite. They're supposed to win. even though everybody knows if Georgia loses, they're still in the playoffs. But still, there's this dog factor for Alabama that almost seems too good to pass up.
Well, it has to feel good to pass up. It's been 158 games since they've been an underdog. A long, long time between drinks of water that way. They're also looking at an Alabama team that's as large of an underdog as they are based upon perception. And that perception being everybody remembers what they saw last. And they saw Alabama taken to the wire. They looked for all intents and purposes like they were going to lose that football game to Auburn. But you have to give them their credit. A minute and 30 seconds to go, and they drive 97 yards. That's what a champion does, okay? And they go to overtime, and they win in overtime. That's what a champion does. And that's basically because they have all 4- and 5-star recruits on that football team. Now, they're coming
By
up
the way,
dog.
don't remind me. I had Michigan money line, Auburn money line in a parlay last week.
Oh boy. There you go. Well, I would suggest playing Alabama in a money line this week, okay?
Yeah, I'm thinking
Okay?
that too. Yes.
Yeah. So what you've got here now is this rare role for this underdog playing this number one football team that the only tough game they've played this year, and that's their Achilles heel. They played a very, very weak schedule.
Yeah.
And the only team they played that had a good defense was the first game of the season, Clemson, and they failed to score a touchdown in that game. Now they're going to take an Alabama football team that is really coming defensively. They've held, I think, 5 of their last 6 opponents to season low yards. That's what Nick Saban's defenses have done in the past.
That's right.
In the games that he's won championships.
Yep.
So now Georgia's going to have to find a way to suddenly put up an offense that's worthy, of going toe-to-toe with Alabama. They could go toe-to-toe defensively against one another. I don't think Georgia can go toe-to-toe with Alabama's offense. I think that's the big edge in this football game. You got the experience edge here as well in this contest here. And when you dress up a team that has been favored and dominant so long and put them up in the role of an underdog, I'm going to be first in line because I think the pressure is all on Georgia in this game. The other side, if you want these conspiracy theorists, okay, who insist that the Zebras are going to make sure Alabama wins this game. That way the SEC puts two teams.
Zebras, yeah.
Yes, they put 2 teams into the playoffs instead of just Georgia.
Yeah.
So, you can believe that or not. I don't believe that, but you still have to go out and you have to outplay your opponent. And Alabama is very capable of outplaying Georgia in this football game.
A couple of trends that work into favor of Georgia. They've covered all 4 of their games as favorites of 19 or less. Actually, it's just bottom line overall 4-0 against the spread as a favorite of 19 or less or a dog. So, but here's the bigger one: 14-0-1 against the spread in their last 15 as a favorite of less than 13 when they're in a revenge situation, which we know they are in, because they haven't beaten Alabama in the last 6 spots. And here's another thing that's different from Michigan, Ohio State, and I talk about this all the time, is when you have a team that has not beaten another team in years, and then you put them as the favorite. And it's not just a 3-point favorite. This is a touchdown favorite. So that's why this is one of those things where, yeah, of course, we all know how good Georgia is defensively and all of that, but these are opportunities that do not come about very often, and you have to take advantage of it, win or lose. And that's what I'm going to do by rolling the dice on Alabama, not just to cover, but also to possibly win the game. And if that happens, then you're going to have Alabama, Georgia, and if Michigan wins, Michigan's in. And then the talk starts to really happen regarding what if Cincinnati and Oklahoma State win? Starting with Cincinnati. And they're at home, so that helps. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago when they were a 10-point favorite in this spot against SMU. And they rolled all over SMU. That's why I was kind of surprised the line was still 10 in this one. Houston's better than SMU. But you're still talking about a team that's got a 26-game home streak. Ritter's never lost there. They've won the last 2 years against Houston by 76-33. So this is a matchup that's still very good for Cincinnati. And like I said, I just think that the way they're playing, and because they're a running team, and because they've got a quarterback that's efficient and doesn't turn the ball over, and they're a defensive team, that I think it's so much easier to not stress out, to not put yourself in a position where you're turning the ball over with bad passes, like we talked about when you're a passing team. So, and when you're a really good defensive team, the defense it's not, defenses don't normally choke an entire game. It's just, this doesn't happen usually. They could choke a last drive like Auburn did last week against Alabama, but you can't choke an entire game. I think it's you can do that on offense, but bottom line is as much as the upset here would not be a shock, because Cincinnati, by the way, Cincinnati was a huge favorite last year to Tulsa at home and only won by 3. But I just think they've been there. They've done that. They're more experienced, and they're not going to let that happen again. And they're going to understand that in order to get to the playoffs, they're going to have to not only win, but they're going to have to win impressively.
Let's play this scene out, Greg, here. Let's imagine Houston, who's on this 11-game win streak right now, wins this football game. Houston then goes to a New Year's Six bowl game, and Cincinnati ends up in the Alamo Bowl, okay? What a free fall that is, from going from the college football playoff to the Alamo Bowl, okay?
That's stupid bowl matchups.
Yeah,
that could happen. Imagine
because
that.
The pairings, exactly
Who would
right.
they play?
I have no idea. I don't know
Bowl.
what tie the ACC has. I just threw that out there as a name, okay? But it would be Houston that would be going to the New Year's Six Bowl, and Cincinnati would be taking, obviously, a lesser bowl that we wouldn't be watching on New Year's Day.
Probably not, yeah.
Right, so that's what happens in a situation like this. This is a good football game because Cincinnati gets a chance to prove that they belong in the college football playoff by beating a good football team right now. I don't know how good they are. Houston's been putting a lot of teams to sleep here of late. They've won 11 in a row. They've done a really, really good job, and they've done it on defense. That's what the amazing thing about Houston is. They're playing some really, really good defense here right now. People don't realize that. They think they're all about offense, but they're not. They suffocate you defensively. So Cincinnati's going to have to play mistake-free football to be able to get past them. And I just hope the pressure isn't on the Bearcats in this game, like it probably will be, because they're sitting right now at that number 4 slot in the college football rankings and can't afford to mess up. They can win this game by 1 point, and they will make it to the college football playoff. I'm going to lean to Cincinnati in this football game. I think this is the game that that not only they have been looking for, but the group of 5 teams have been looking for somebody to crash the party, and they could indeed be that team with this win. I don't know if they're going to get the number, but I think they're going to get the win.
Here's the thing, and I am all for Cincinnati. I'm all for the little guy, the dog, all for it. When I'm just trying to be unbiased, and I look at Oklahoma State, and I look at what Oklahoma State's schedule was, and the fact that their only loss, if they beat Baylor, was a 3-point end of the game loss to Iowa State. And Cincinnati had their only game, really. You can say what you want about Houston and the good record, but Houston's Houston. Notre Dame was the big schedule winner for Cincinnati. Okay, that's a nice win. Beat Notre Dame at Notre Dame. But really, that's it. That's it. Whereas Oklahoma State, got to beat Oklahoma. Got to beat Baylor twice. Got to beat. Who's the other team they had to beat? That's a good team in this conference. There's another team in there. I just can't think of it right now. But the fact is, that is a tough schedule, much tougher than Cincinnati. I'm not saying Cincinnati couldn't do the same thing Oklahoma State did with that schedule, because this is a good Cincinnati team. But it's not the same. It's just not the same schedule. It's a much easier schedule. And if anything, this just proves why 4 teams is just ridiculous. Why you need more than 4 teams.
Well, you have to beat who's in front of you. And the people that are in front of Oklahoma State are Power 5 teams from a Power 5 conference. The teams that are in front of Cincinnati are coming from a group of 5 conference. So they're obviously going to be weaker teams. So the strength of schedule is not going to help Cincinnati out here at all. It's going to have to be perfection within their record. That's the only way that they're going to make the bowl game here this particular year. So it does open the door up for a 1-loss Oklahoma State if Cincinnati trips up here. And if they ended up tripping up and they both each had 1 loss, I would put Oklahoma State in the championship game ahead of them as well.
Yeah, it's if I'm an Oklahoma State fan and I can't get in to the championship, because I know what I'm saying if I'm an Oklahoma State fan. If we're Oklahoma, we're getting in.
Yes, right.
And I'm upset because there's no way Oklahoma's not getting in if Oklahoma has the same schedule and the same outcome. And it's just, it is what it is. But what I don't want to see, because I said this before with my college basketball, I hate every year, and I look at the college basketball brackets, and I was, okay, what games? Here's like, and we'll be talking more college basketball once the calendar turns, and you always fall in love with like 5 or 6 teams, and you want to see where those 5 or 6 teams go into the schedule and the bracket. For whatever reason, it always seems like 4 out of the 5 teams are in the same region for me. Oh, can't you spread them out for me so I have all of my favorite teams that I like that I want to run to the Final Four, but no, only one can make it because you put them in the set. Now you got them playing each other. What I could see happening is I finally get Michigan into the playoffs, and you're going to match me with Cincinnati. You're going to match me with the thing that I've been waiting for since this inception of this play, to get a long shot. I've been rooting for the long shot dog to get into this spot, and they're going to get in, and then the first matchup will be Michigan and Cincinnati.
Unbelievable.
So, I know it's going to happen. I just know it. Okay, Oklahoma State. The main thing that I'm concerned with Oklahoma State in this game is just the odds, because, and I think we saw it last week. I don't know. It's almost like I think I'm still taking Oklahoma State, and I'm going to give up the 5.5, but I think I'm probably going to end up more than likely winning the spread the way they won the spread the first time, where it's one of those, maybe they get a late touchdown to take a 2-score lead, that kind of thing. I just worry about it because I don't know if Oklahoma State can just go in there and just blow away Baylor like Oklahoma would. So I think this is a pretty close game.
Well, what Oklahoma State's going to do is a lot like what Houston wants to do, and other teams who have good defenses. They're going to want to take them out of their game. And Oklahoma State's defense is right on par with just about every team in college football this year.
Yeah.
So where they're at is not a surprise in that sense, because they've earned it. They've earned it defensively. And it was nice seeing them upset Oklahoma, even though they were a favorite.
Yes.
The whole news media looked at it as an upset.
Great job, by the way, in the second half defensively, because that defense, what they did in the first half, it was like you're doing it again. How can you give up all these points to this Oklahoma quarterback who's been struggling, and you're the best defense in the country next to Georgia? But they came out in the second half, and they showed just how good their defense was. Great job by Knowles. However he re-schemed things in the second half, it worked to perfection.
Yep, and look at all of what Oklahoma State has done this year. I mean, one, they've beaten Baylor, but they're the only team in the country that's beaten 2 teams ranked in the college football playoff top 10. So they've played football teams, and they've disposed of those football teams. This is not a surprise in how did Oklahoma State get here. They've earned this spot in this particular football game. I'll be surprised if they lose this contest here. I think they're too well coached. They have too good of a defense. And if you look at all the edges, you look in the midweek alert and you check out the edges, offensively, defensively, Oklahoma State wins most of those check marks. For that reason, I think Oklahoma State wins this football game and prays that Cincinnati loses.
By the way, in the first matchup, when they beat Baylor 24-14, Sanders had 3 interceptions in the game, and they still found a way to win the game. So that can't be the case again. And by the way, Bohannon, do we know if he's starting at Baylor?
I think it's still up in the air, but the kid behind him has played really, really good football. I mean, we saw that in the down at the end of the stretch when he come in. Which game was it? The big football game when Bohannon went out and he came in and he preserved the victory, and then got the start. So I don't think they're going to miss a whole lot here. He can do a whole lot more throwing the ball than Bohannon can. Bohannon's a better running quarterback. So either way, I don't think Mike Gundy is losing sleep over which quarterback is going to be available.
Okay, Pac-12. And another rematch situation. Utah is not liking the fact that they have to beat Oregon twice in like a couple of months. But that's what they're going to have to do. And usually this is what you want, Oregon in this spot. But Oregon was just in this spot as a 3-point dog on the road not too long ago, and Utah destroyed Oregon. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking that it's time. It's time for Utah to break through because, again, I'm kind of looking at it like the way I'm looking at this weekend. I'm going to be all in on all the newbies. And these are one of the newbies, Utah, that they were finally break through and win the Pac-12. So I'm going to say they're going to go ahead and do it. Rising is a better quarterback than Anthony Brown. He's been fantastic since he's taken over, and I just think it's time for Utah to get it done.
Well, they've won 8 of their last 9 football games. They're playing really, really good football right now. And Oregon is the type of football team that you never know what you're going to get. They go into Ohio State and stun the Buckeyes, and they lose football games that they're supposed to win. You've got Mario Cristobal, who has not fared well as a small dog in his career, especially when he has the revenge. He's just 1-5 straight up and against the spread in football games like that. And as we called out in the Playbook newsletter this week, revenge doesn't mean anything in these conference playoffs if it's same season revenge. And in fact, when you play really good football teams who took you out the first time, they're going to take you behind the woodshed and show you why they beat you the first time, and they're going to take you out even more the next time. So that's all part of our awesome angle inside the Playbook newsletter here. So this is revenge here for Oregon, yes. But as our database shows us or tells us, the revenge doesn't matter, especially if it's a good football team that's looking to hold them back. And I think Utah will do just that. I agree with you. I think Utah wins the game and finally makes their mark.
Okay, now here's these 2 games I want to talk about together. It's the ACC and the Sun Belt. I got to ask you because when I looked at the line on Sunday, I think it was Wake Forest the favorite opening line?
No.
Okay, so that was a mistake. Okay.
Yeah, it was a mistake, right?
All right. I kind of felt, even though when I was thinking of this line, I thought this line was going to be 7. I really thought Pittsburgh was going to be a touchdown favorite in this game. And I kind of felt the 2 games where I kind of felt that the odds were a little bit where I didn't think was this one and the Sun Belt. I was completely shocked that Lafayette was getting 3 points in this game. Shocked. I thought Lafayette was clearly a 3-point favorite or better in this game. Those are the 2 games that initially stood out for me, especially because I think Pitt should have been a stronger favorite. But the Sun Belt one was the biggest one. But with Pitt, this is another situation where I'm like, how do you, almost wish that it was Pitt and Clemson or something like that, so you could see Pitt beat Clemson in a championship game. They're going to beat Wake Forest. I mean, who roots against Wake Forest? And especially when they've had a great season and Dave Clawson, it's the kind of program, football team you want to root for. But I just think Pittsburgh's a better team. And even though Wake has a very dangerous offense and Hartman's a dangerous quarterback, Kenny Pickett, he's going to be a first-round draft pick. And I think he's going to cement his legacy in Pitt on Saturday night.
I agree with you. I think they're the better football team. They're better defensive football team by a mile in this game. And more times often than not, it's the point we keep driving home that defense wins these championship games. Wake Forest has been an exciting football team. They've outscored a lot of teams this year, but you can't keep outscoring teams. You have to eventually stop football teams. And you've got Pat Narduzzi in a role that he's really, really excelled in his career. When he's favored, a small favorite of 5 or less, he's 14-3 straight up, 13-3 to the number. That's the role he'll be in this particular situation here. I'm going to be with the Pitt Panthers in this game because of the defense.
And then the Sun Belt game, which in my mind is the biggest surprise, the line. Like I said, I mean, and I get a couple of reasons why they are the dog. Because when you look inside the numbers and you can look at it on your midweek alert, one of the biggest disparities as far as total net yards is this matchup. and it completely favors App State. And remember, it was just a few weeks ago that we talked about Lafayette in one of these situations and talked about how they had like a 3 in 4 game stretch where they were winning games with like 2 or 3 minutes to go. So they were just getting by. But even though that's the case, I don't know what it is. It's like I see this Lafayette team and this mission they're on, almost like Georgia and Michigan, where this is a team that's beaten us twice in the championship game. We're going to get them this time. Napier's going to Florida, but he's not going yet. So he's going to finish the job, and the players are still all in. There's not going to be any issues with Napier going to Florida because of that. And they're at home, and say what you want about, oh yeah, but Lafayette close wins, and Lafayette close wins. And well, I noticed a game on their schedule that wasn't a close win. Blowout. Oh, App State. Oh, they were a 4-point home dog. Almost like they are now. Come on. I love this line.
And what did they do in that game? They held them to a season-low 13 points and 211 yards.
Yeah.
So suddenly the world is in love with App State here, and I'm with you. I can't understand the line at all. I think this game should have been closer to Pick'em or a small favorite to Lafayette in the contest here. There is a lot of love for Billy Napier in Lafayette these days, okay? And the reason being that he was being wooed for each of the last 2 or 3 years by Power 5 conferences, and he said no each and every time. He wanted to stay here and complete the mission with his football team. He was lured away finally by Florida in a deal that he couldn't pass up. The players completely understand that. And he showed his commitment to the team by wanting to stay around and coach them in this championship game. This is going to be a win-win for the Gipper. If there was one, this will be that particular football game. I think the wrong team is favored here as well. And I think Lafayette sends Billy Napier out a winner in this contest.
Yeah, it's just incredible. I know we didn't have time to go over it. We will when we talk again in the next few weeks. We have our bowl talk, but just the amount of coaching changes, the impact is just incredible. There's only one more left, and that's Notre Dame. So I haven't heard anything today. I mean, the only college name that makes sense is Matt Campbell.
Yeah, from a head coaching standpoint, it does. But I've also heard that Notre Dame is looking very, very hard at their defensive coordinator to elevate him to the head coach. So that may happen. I don't know. Who knows what they think these days? It will probably be something that neither of us are even talking about.
Probably.
Yeah.
I had that guy. I didn't even know he was available. Yeah.
And how did Brian Kelly even go to LSU?
Yeah,
Come on.
That kind of went from left field too. I was like, everything he's done has been coaching there, not there.
Yep.
It's like Beeline almost.
Bielema. Bielema, yeah.
Yeah, Bielema, yeah.
And doesn't that Irish coach fit in real nice down in Cajun country? I don't.
You better have some good recruiting connections down there.
Yeah, I guess maybe so.
I don't know. Conference USA is a good one, and this one it was tough for me because I've been on this, and we've both been on this UTSA team all season, and they've been very impressive. And they've had their big wins away early in non-conference games, including Illinois. They also won at Western Kentucky when they got into conference play. But then all of a sudden, they have this look-ahead game to Southern Miss. And then the next week, they are trailing UAB and they have to score late to win. And then next week, the inevitable come down, and they lose. So they haven't looked pretty the last few weeks. And here's Western Kentucky coming into this matchup, just destroying everybody. They were one of my top picks last week, and they came through. And they are just killing. We talked about it last week against Marshall, and they're just killing everybody. But now Western Kentucky's almost a 3-point favorite at Texas San Antonio, at almost what we talked about with Lafayette. So you have this Texas San Antonio team that beat Western Kentucky in Western Kentucky. Now they're home, and they're the dog. So I'm gonna go with Texas San Antonio in this spot. It's a tough one for me, like I said, because both teams have made money for me this year. But I just think there's a little bit of disrespect going on there for Texas San Antonio, and maybe they'll let everybody pay for it.
Well, if Lafayette is not the Rodney Dangerfield team this week, it has to be UTSA. Being a home dog on their home field here, a football team that the only mistake they made was their last game, and we oftentimes talk about a bubble burst. Well, they don't work bubble burst when it happens in the last game of the season. In fact, it works the other way. Those teams sort of come back and win their next football contest. Yes, Western Kentucky is on this major winning run, but it's been against Sisters of the Poor, okay?
Right.
Now they're finding themselves favored against a football team that has a better record than they do. And that's where, in roles like this, Bailey Zappi, the quarterback from the Hilltoppers, has struggled. Okay, he's really struggled in games like that. He's only won 4 of 11 games straight up into the number against teams with a better record than they have. And you've got a team in UTSA that does nothing but win football games at home. I think I was a little bit surprised at them coming a home dog in this contest as well. I think the wrong team is favored here, and I'll be on UTSA, the Roadrunners, with you.
Okay, Mountain West Conference. Now, this is one where this is probably the only, besides the Alabama because it's just so obvious, but this is actually a dog that I'm going to roll with, is Utah State. They're getting about almost a 2-1 dog in this one. And if you look at Utah State, they're 3-0 straight up and against the spread as a road dog this year. So, hey, we've been there and done that. And they've won 6 out of 7. San Diego State, meanwhile, 1-2 against the spread as a home favorite this year. And they've just won a lot of ugly games. They have had like the ugliest offense in the last few years of any winning program. But they've had such a good defense, and they really, they're a good program. They're well put. They've got a lot going for them for many years, from coach to coach. And Hoka's done a good job since he's been there. But I just think that this Utah State team might be able to surprise San Diego State in here. I think it's going to be a good football game. And look, if Utah State hadn't been good in this role before this year, I'd be okay. San Diego State, I like them. But I think Utah State, this is what happens when you build a season as a football team, an identity. The identity of Utah State is put us on the road as a dog, and we're going to come through. And because we know how to do that, I think they're in a pretty good spot here. By the way, you need some sunglasses.
Yeah, well, it's going to be that time of the day here for me. I can put them on right now. I think the wrong team is favored here as well.
Wow.
You take a look at Utah State, you got a huge coaching edge in Blake Anderson over Brady Hoke, number one. He comes to Utah State and turns a 1-win team to a +8 win team this year. That's the greatest improvement of any team in college football this year. Houston has also won a net 8 games plus this year, but Utah State did it as a 1-win team last year. And also, I talked to you before the show about if you go inside the midweek alert and look at the stats in this football game against fellow common opponents, it's a landmine to Utah State. In fact, in those 7 common opponent games, San Diego State is negative in total yards, and Utah State is plus almost 1,000 total yards.
Yeah.
So, if you believe in statistics, you have to like Utah State in this game. I do. I like statistics. I like my database, and I like the Aggies in this contest.
And give Anderson maybe another year, and he's gonna move up even more.
Exactly right.
He went from the Sun Belt to the Mountain West. Now he's gonna get into the group. He's gonna get into the Power 5 next.
Sure he will.
I wouldn't even be surprised if they hired him next year. Somebody all of a sudden, maybe we get the Notre Dame job. And then finally the MAC, and this is always a fun kind of game. Which, to tell you the truth, I was surprised. I don't know why they decided to move this game off of the weeknight. I don't get it. I mean, there's enough Saturday championship games. Do they really need to be? Who's going to watch the MAC championship game at 12 o'clock? Who are they going up against, by the way, at 12 o'clock on Saturday? Going up against some team. But it's Northern Illinois and Kent State. And Kent State's a 3-point favorite in this one. And I kind of look, I really like the job that this Northern Illinois team, the coach has done a fantastic job. What is it, Womack?
Hammock, yeah.
Hammock.
Yeah.
Hammock. Yeah, Womack is the one from South Alabama, I believe. And
Right.
Northern Illinois, so I really like this team. I like that, especially in this spot. They've been disrespected a lot this year, and they keep winning games when nobody expects them to. But I just kind of feel, again, I'm going to go back to what I said: the Michigans, the Georgias, even the Lafayettes, the Utahs. I think this is the week where the teams like Kent State break through against Northern Illinois, making their 9th appearance in a MAC championship game versus a Kent State program that has never won a MAC championship game. So I think Kent State breaks through like all the other little teams that are trying to break through this weekend and beats Northern Illinois.
I wouldn't be surprised if it happens either here, Greg. I think this is a real tough game to handicap, largely because there's not a lot going on for either football team this year. Kent State took the Huskies out earlier, and my database says that same season revenge does not favor the team that lost the first football game. But I will say this. There was no team in college football this year that won more games straight up as an underdog than did Northern Illinois. 5 times they pulled the rug out as an underdog.
There you go.
It's 5 straight up wins. So if you play them on a money line, I'm not going to blame you, and I'll know exactly why.
Yeah, so there's only 2 Friday games. And I guess the good thing is they're alone at 12 o'clock on Saturday. No, Oklahoma State Baylor is the 12 o'clock game. That was the one. So
This game belonged on a Wednesday, Greg, when they were playing all those MAC games on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. This would have been the crowning moment for Wednesday MAC action, is what it would have been.
And even if you had to move it to Thursday, but the NFL was playing. But yes, Wednesday would have been perfect. We all would have watched it. But instead, you're going to, Baylor, Oklahoma State, MAC?
Yeah, come on.
Thank goodness we have the DVR because we can watch them both.
Yeah.
So, great job as always, Mark. What's going on with playbooksports.com? Because we're getting closer and closer to the end of the calendar year. That means we'll start talking college basketball before you know it.
Yes, we are. In fact, we'll be putting together our College Bowl stat report once the bowl pairings are announced. That'll be ready on December the 15th, the College Bowl stat report. So mark that down on your calendar. That's a must-have if you're interested. Also, take a look, if you will. We've got coming up here, next week's edition will be a pro football only edition for the Playbook newsletter. But the midweek alert, when it comes out, is going to be what you're going to have in your hands, handicapping the NFL going down the stretch, because that's when all these stats really tend to matter here. So check everything out online at playbooksports.com.
And you better feel good about next week, because the week after you're going to have that, what 4 days? It's going to be one of those things where you're going to go into the submarine and
into the cave and not be seen until I talk to you next time.
Yeah, don't even bother messaging me because you ain't getting no return.
Right.
Just quickly, if I'm looking at NFL dogs this week, I actually think New Orleans may not be a bad dog, but Pittsburgh's got to be at the top. With Mike Tomlin getting points against Baltimore. Is TJ Watt playing, do you know? Is he still looking like he may miss the game?
I haven't heard that he's cleared. No, I haven't. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not going to, but I haven't heard that he's cleared yet, no.
Yeah, so that was the one game. Those are the 2 upsets that I would be thinking about. And you know what would be fun is if New Orleans upsets Dallas and Washington beats Vegas, Washington and Dallas play next week for the NFC East lead.
Wow.
How
Incredible.
strange has that been when Dallas has been the dominant team in that division all season?
What a wacky season it's been so far. I mean, we knew it was going to be odd with 17 games instead of 16, but it's really playing out that way this year. There's not a lot of what you would call regularity in the National Football League this year. The surprises keep coming week after week after week.
And McCarthy, he's not going to coach today, right? Tonight?
No, he's not.
Yeah.
He's out with the COVID. Yes, exactly.
So
which might help Dallas, by the way.
It might help him. Yes, you're right. Maybe you want to take the Cowboys now. Appreciate it as always, Mark. We'll talk to you again next week when we talk NFL, and we'll have a little bit of time to talk about the college football coaching carousel and also a recap of all the championship games. Appreciate your time as always.
My pleasure as always, Greg. Be well, stay safe, and enjoy the games this weekend.